Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of Throne of Steel episode number 137 based on novel. So let's start. The effects of teleportation to the Tower of Eternity relaxed Long Hao-Chun greatly. Yet to his surprise, he very rapidly discovered that the deep blue ray adhering to his body hadn't disappeared, but was still entangled with the golden radiance from the Tower of Eternity. A tall silhouette also came to his sight. That teleportation was instantaneous, and it took only a flash for Long Hao-Chun to appear in the first floor of the Tower of Eternity, and along with him was teleported the demon god of clear vision Crocell. Crocell's shock was far greater than Long Hao-Chun's. The instant of the teleportation, he lost control of his innate ability, and was immediately then carried into a spatial transportation that he was unable to resist even at his level of cultivation. At the very moment, he couldn't help but spit a dark blue mouthful of blood. Originally, he was unlikely to suffer great damage and weakening with the angel demon god Payman's assistance. But during the process of the teleportation, his innate ability was still maintained, and interrupting it was impossible. Its continual use and the spatial travel's influence inflicted on him substantial damage. The stronger an ability gets, the greater the backlash it could carry, just like for a spiritual stove. This demon god of clear vision Crocell's own cultivation was actually insufficient for him to rank among the top 40-something. The 5 or 6 immediately lower-ranked demon gods were all above him in fighting strength. The reason why he could rank 49th was his innate ability. Crocell was known as the demon god of clear vision, able to scout out the enemy's true circumstances from a very large range. His magic belonged to the psychic type. At the same time, just like the great majority of the demon gods, he was a dual magic and martial cultivator. Any spell of illusion was useless in front of him. Also, his innate ability wasn't so powerful in itself, but things were different when he teams with other demon gods. This innate ability called Clear Vision's godly pull could, in a certain range, lock his mental force on an opponent, and it had a powerful teleportation effect, able to instantly teleport the target in front of him. In some sense, this Clear Vision's godly pull was a different approach, producing the same results as the Saint's spiritual stove, only far more powerful than the latter. After all, the Saint's spiritual stove just pulled, whereas the Clear Vision's godly pull was capable of direct teleportation. Just think, if Crocell's teleportation had succeeded, Long Hao-Chun would then be facing the instant surrounding of 8 great demon gods. No matter how gifted he could be, and even if he could unleash his whole strength promptly, and have the defense of his divine tools, the outcome would still be certain death. That's the encirclement of 8 great demon gods, giving one not the slightest chance. Of course, because of Clear Vision's godly pull's power, it has great limitations. Crocell can only use it once a day, and by only relying on his own demon god pillar, regardless of whether it succeeds or fails, it would put him in a very long state of psychic weakness. But that's unless another demon god consents to support him with his own mental force, greatly lessening this backlash. At the same time, Clear Vision's godly pull cannot be used against an enemy with a cultivation or mental force surpassing his own. As long as the enemy's spiritual energy or mental force exceeds his, the odds of success lower greatly. Another restriction is the warning that Chiao Yonghao gave. Clear Vision's godly pull can only be used on one target, so if Long Hao-Chun had grabbed someone else, it would immediately have failed. That's the reason why the angel demon god Paimon released his angel domain, for the sake of covering up the use of his ability. This Clear Vision's godly pull already made the warrior temple suffer large losses. 4 powerhouses at the grade of War Emperor died this way in the demon god's hands. That's why the arrangement of Chiao Yonghao's formation was so tight. The powerhouses from the warrior temple were standing 2 by 2 to avoid leaving Crocell any chance. But Long Hao-Chun was different. He had no prior knowledge of the demon god of clear vision Crocell's ability, which is what led to this. Someone walking frequently on the edge of a river has someday to wet his shoes. Crocell walked far too much along night roads, and finally met his nemesis, encountering this time Long Hao-Chun. Long Hao-Chun's natural mental force was exceptional and far above powerhouses of the same level. But Crocell was after all a demon god of the 9th step, and with his magical attribute being the psychic attribute. As such, Hao-Chun's mental force was still below his. Unless his cultivation breaks through the 9th step, he cannot compete with the demon god of clear vision. But that powerful mental force enabled Long Hao-Chun to respond promptly. As the time required for the teleportation increased with the opposing mental force, Long Hao-Chun had at his disposal a few seconds' time and succeeded in activating the Tower of Eternity in this span. The Tower of Eternity obviously had a greater precedence than Clear Vision's godly pull. How could the demon god of clear vision compare to a super-divine tool-ranked existence? Moreover, Long Houchen was its successor, and someone he could count on to bring many more souls. In a time of great danger, this super-divine tool would obviously come to his rescue. However, as Clear Vision's godly pull was in the end enhanced through the demon god's pillar's power, it also gained fantastic boosts, which is how this strange result happened. The Angel of Clear Vision Crocell really managed to teleport Long Houchen in front of him, but at the same time Long Houchen relied on the Tower of Eternity, teleporting the two of them here by that way. The two teleportations had succeeded, but Long Houchen also escaped mortal peril. What's this place? How did you escape? Crocell was full of doubts and shock. Looking at the opposite Long Houchen, he couldn't help but ask, as in the meantime his hands separated, letting a long blade appear in between them. Black flames lit his long blade, and in the meantime, twisting undulations surrounded visibly Crocell's body. Facing the enemy that had countered his own Clear Vision's godly pull, he was extremely wary. At the time he discovered that Crocell was teleported to the Tower of Eternity alongside him, he was also in great shock. When Crocell asked that question, he drew back very swiftly, then the divine snail shield of sun and moon appeared in front of his chest. Opposite to Crocell's complete reaction of puzzlement, Long Houchen already guessed the truth of the matter from the current situation and the previous circumstances. I didn't escape but countered your move. Long Houchen replied coldly, and from the powerful aura released by the enemy's body, he could determine that he is a demon god. Just before, he seemed to have been beside the demon god leading the enemies. Long Houchen still remembered Crocell's appearance from that time. One could only admit that this demon god had very handsome looks, with the addition of the 6 wings on his back making him look even more captivating. Crocell had already calmed down, and wasn't impatient to attack Long Houchen. It's another space. Since you have the means to teleport here, you must naturally have the means to teleport back. Bring me out, and I'll spare your life. Stalling for time was to his advantage. Crocell was terrified of this space, but being after all a demon god expert at the psychic attribute, he had some understanding of this place. He knew that to be able to go through a spatial travel of this extent, Long Houchen surely had a kind of spatial key. By grabbing that spatial key, he naturally couldn't return back to Shenmue Dalu. But the most important was the psychic internal injury he had sustained. He couldn't see through Long Houchen, especially after his release of the divine snail shield. With his current injuries, he didn't have the complete confidence of being able to get away in one piece after killing Long Houchen. As such, he spoke to stall for time, and giving himself some time to recover. The enemy was after all only at the 8th step, so he had the full confidence of being able to kill Long Houchen after recovering partly from the psychic internal injury. Back then, the last ranked snake demon god was already as cunning as a fox, to say nothing about the 49th ranked Crocell. Although he still didn't have a domain, his cultivation was thoroughly at the 9th step. Spare my life? What a pity, I have no plans to spare you. Long Houchen ridiculed him. Like Crocell was scheming against him, the same happened on his side. Long Houchen was now extending his senses fully, making an all-out effort to determine Crocell's level of cultivation. The enemy was without a doubt at the 9th step, but great differences existed between different powerhouses of the 9th step. Crocell's previous deep blue spit of blood couldn't be faked, and was a clear proof of wounds. However, Long Houchen didn't know about the intensity of his injury. The inside of the Tower of Eternity was like Long Houchen's main grounds. He was now determining the gap of strength between the two of them, and thus wouldn't rush into battle. In front of Crocell, Long Houchen was disadvantaged in terms of cultivation, but he had his own aspects of superiority. First, he was fully confident in preventing Crocell from connecting with his demon god pillar. A demon god having lost his pillar was like an ordinary powerhouse of the 9th step and no more. Secondly, the enemy was wounded, and no matter to what extent, at least he wasn't in good condition. And from his powerful mental force, his injury should be on the psychic side. Facing a powerhouse of psychic attribute, Long Houchen wasn't afraid in the slightest. Even the 12th ranked emo-demon god Sytry had suffered the backlash of her own forbidden spell. In a fight of the 8th step against the 9th step, maybe he could really leave this demon god here forever. Thinking of that, Long Houchen's heartbeat couldn't help but accelerate. Should he fight the demon god in a duel? Although he had killed the goblin knight Seer, both Seer and Andromalius were still demon gods of the 8th step. Although they could temporarily reach the 9th step thanks to their demon god pillars, there was still a difference between the 9th step and that. Can I really win? Long Houchen didn't dare affirm with certainty, but already made his decision to give it a try in any case. Hearing Long Houchen's words, Crocell raised his eyebrows, and contrary to expectations, smiled. Young knight of the 8th step, You're attempting to challenge a mighty opponent of the 9th step. I know what you are thinking, that I can't have the assistance of my demon god pillar here, right? Even so, how could you be a match against me? You have only one option, to serve or to die. Saying that, Crocell raised the long blade in his right hand, and the pitch-black edge of his blade was launched at Long Houchen. This blade wasn't moving very fast, but the instant it struck out, Long Houchen only felt as if locked by Crocell, and couldn't avoid the blow no matter which way he tried to evade. Crocell's eyes had already turned deep blue. The demon god of clear vision was not just talk. In time of battle, his clear vision technique had crucial uses. It was able to create decisive opportunities against the enemy, as well as predict his next moves. Under those conditions, his attacks were undoubtedly very effective. None of the 72 demon gods was a simple character, whether in strength or intelligence. Crocell's attack aimed at intimidating as well as probing. He was unclear on Long Houchen's precise level of cultivation. Long Houchen drew back slightly, and his body abruptly traced an arc, wielding the divine snail shield of sun and moon with both his arms. A resonant buzzing sound spread out on the whole first floor of the Tower of Eternity. Both Long Houchen's feet slid backwards, only stopping on the edge of the tower. As the divine snail shield spread glitters of intense orange light, Long Houchen's body flashed in light, as the surroundings shook continuously under the flashes of different colors. After bearing this attack, Long Houchen's face was covered in astonishment. Indeed, he sensed that Crocell's internal spiritual energy seemed just above 100,000, definitely not reaching the second rank of the 9th step. But even at such a level of cultivation, relying on divine obstruction actually turned out to be totally insufficient. His body still glowed with the light of bright vengeance, the ability formed along with divine obstruction to reflect some damage back to the enemy, but the soul-binding chain's light also spread. In other words, he had been wounded. Although they weren't deep, despite the divine snail shield's defense and damage sharing with the others, he still sustained some light wounds. From this could be seen the dominance of Crocell's strength. "Little fly, you dare show such insolence?" Crocell didn't stop at that. After the first strike came off smoothly, the long blade chopped at Houchen, drawing a pitch-black brilliance onto the sky, which aimed straight at Long Houchen like a bolt of thunder. His blade's edge seems to be using an ability similar to Spiritual Highland. Long Houchen determined instantly from the first blow. What he didn't know at all was that in the demon's ranks, every demon god without his own clan certainly had far less influential strength, but the demon god emperor encouraged them, frequently giving them the priority for some powerful equipment. Therefore, individual demon gods had comparatively better practical fighting strength. And although the demon god of clear vision Crocell's strength was ranked rather low among the individual demon gods, he couldn't possibly have obtained the 49th seat without sufficient strength. He was a real powerhouse of the 9th step and furthermore had the clear vision technique at his disposal. If his cultivation reached the point of being able to unleash a domain, maybe he could rank among the top 36. In this probing, Long Houchen immediately suffered a loss. However, as a god's chosen one, he naturally couldn't let himself continuously suffer losses. Seeing the second attack of the enemy arrive, Long Houchen's figure strangely disappeared without warning nor trace. Bang. Crocell's attack landed directly on the Tower of Eternity, causing a series of buzzes he couldn't help but blank out. Even with the clear vision technique, he actually couldn't tell out how Long Houchen had gone off. Long Houchen obviously couldn't possibly teleport himself back to Shengmo Dalu. A time of adjustment was required before teleporting back, and besides, he could absolutely not leave Crocell here by himself. Otherwise, if he explores and finds out about the deep secrets of the Tower of Eternity, and manages to obtain something, things could become a real pain. In a flash of light, Long Houchen reappeared in his previous location, and this time, the hill-sized five-headed Haoyue was alongside him. Outside from the teleportation to the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen also had his blood contract pact with Haoyue. In the battle against Crocell inside the Tower of Eternity, Long Houchen's greatest reliance was the possibility to show his full abilities without any worries. Even if he didn't manage to kill Crocell, the latter still had no way to escape the Tower of Eternity. Graw, Haoyue's 5 heads snarled together, and deep purple intent rushed forth from him, shrouding the opposite Crocell. Immediately, the previously proud-looking demon god of clear vision lost his head as if facing a monster, already full of shock. Immediately, he became unable to finish his sentence. Long Houchen obviously understood that the opponent had recognized his identity. Recovering the divine snail shield, he pointed his right hand forward and immediately let golden light surge out from him. Yating charmingly appeared in front of him, and in her hands were held up 2 heavy swords. "Master." Yating bowed slightly, holding the two heavy swords out before Long Houchen. Long Houchen took up the aria of the Goddess of Light and then Blue Rain Hibiscus of Light. Immediately, his manners made an earth-shattering change, with mighty sword intent bursting from him without reserve. His aura was far greater than before. You're _that_human_that_human. Crocell stabilized his posture after drawing 10 or so meters back. He tenaciously stared at Haoyue, bursting with great fury. Immediately, he became totally unable to maintain his precious calm. The demon gods succeeded each other through many generations, but not all memories were passed between them. The stronger the demon god, the more of the past memories he'd inherit. That's how the demon god emperor could immediately speak out Haoyue's other name, but this 49th rank demon god of clear vision Crocell couldn't tell it outright. But his engraved instincts were still present. Although he couldn't say Haoyue's identity, he had a deep, threatened feeling that came out, alongside an extremely great fear. Last time, when Long Houchen vanquished the goblin demon god Seer, he immediately had Haoyue transform into armor and merge with his golden foundation armor, but he hadn't had time then to observe Haoyue's changes. He only had felt that Haoyue was a lot more powerful, but giving another look, Haoyue's stature had already surpassed 15 meters, and his aura became more substantial. Faintly, a unique imposing demeanor was coming out from him. Based on Long Houchen's senses, the current Haoyue hadn't yet broken through the 9th step, making him inferior to Houchen, roughly reaching the peak of the 7th step. But his aura at the peak of the 7th step could actually instill such a fear to a powerhouse of the 9th step such as the demon god of clear vision Crocell. Why was that? Long Houchen tried to ask Haoyue many times about the issue in the past, but the latter avoided the subject every time, sometimes looking clearly at a loss, as if unable to recall it himself. Furthermore, at the time he had followed Long Houchen, he had only one head, and gained his second one with the help from Houchen's blood. How could such a small Haoyue know so many things already? In Long Houchen's guesses, the real threat to the demons was very probably Haoyue's ancestor. And the same goes for the ones from his own world. In other words, Haoyue's species was very strong, and he would definitely keep growing stronger in the future. That's Long Houchen's judgment, therefore making it natural that Haoyue wouldn't know about his own such circumstances. Haoyue now had 5 heads of different elements, being light, fire, wind, water, and poison. Of his 5 heads, Little Light was the central one, its neighboring ones being Little Flame and Little Wind, and the outer ones Little Blue and Little Purple. The 5 heads looked at Crocell with cold gazes, faintly leaking out an aura of hatred. Just like the demons seemed terrified when running into Haoyue, Haoyue showed an intense hate in front of the demon gods. Could they have an innate blood enmity? Long Houchen didn't understand this even one bit. After all, Haoyue wasn't a being from this dimension. So how could he show such hatred to the demon gods? It could be estimated to be a bad compatibility engraved in his genes. On his thick neck Haoyue had another protruding area. This bulge was extremely large, and according to Long Houchen's knowledge, one reaching to this point could break at any time, followed by another evolution from him. Perhaps it would give birth to a 6th head. Haoyue let out another low roar, letting out a dense fighting intent. He was seeking to fight and wanted to rush straight at Crocell. Of course, Long Houchen didn't let him do that. Haoyue was after all still only at the peak of the 7th step. If the enemy's attack inflicted heavy damage on him, Houchen would regret it greatly. After a short time of soul-bounded communication, Long Houchen soared high, leaving Haoyue's back. Yating still remained at the same area, and started to chant. Long Houchen didn't summon Star King here. The Tower of Eternity was filled with an intense aura of death, and he was unwilling to let it influence him. But was it really that Long Houchen didn't have other forces than Haoyue and Yating at his disposal? Of course not. Although unwilling to utilize this force, he came to have restraining fears after the previous display of strength Crocell showed. Therefore, he didn't dare show any reservations. 4 rays of light lit successively on Long Houchen's chest and shot out. The blue and yellow rays landed on his back, while the red and green one covered his 2 sides. Imposing auras surged out from them. These were the 4 powerful holy guards, the 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th. Due to Long Houchen not proceeding to enter deeper in the Tower of Eternity, the 4 holy guards didn't undergo any evolution, and still retained a cultivation at the 7th step. But the assistance from the 4 powerhouses, especially with their personal expertise, gave Long Houchen a considerable help. Is that considered ganging up? Long Houchen suddenly had this queer thought. Haoyue, Yating, the 4 holy guards, and Long Houchen himself. That was the entirety of the forces at his disposal. In itself, these were already close to ordinary members composing a king-grade demon hunt squad, and a considerably strong one at that. Crocell gradually calmed down from his state of terror, finally feeling a threat to his life. Long Houchen wasn't frightening, the 4 holy guards weren't even given a look, but Hao Yue's appearance made him lose his head. A thin golden fog rose in his surroundings, storing power. The orange glint of the golden foundation armor rose immediately, and in Long Houchen's hands, the aria of the goddess of light and blue rain, hibiscus of light, projected their own brilliance as well. With the support from the golden foundation armor, Long Houchen had a strong backup of spiritual energy, and spent almost no effort to undo the seal on the aria of the goddess of light. At the same time, blue rain, hibiscus of light, let out its greenish-blue brilliance as equipment of the epic tier. The orange and greenish-blue colors didn't harmonize perfectly, but carried an extremely dazzling look alongside the golden color released from Long Houchen's body. Hao Yue's 5 large head's eyes were filled with thin fluctuations of purple intent, as those 9 purple lines atop Houchen's head started to light up. Hao Yue's right foreleg inclined to the right side, letting out a loud bang as it landed onto the ground. His whole body embedded itself here like a boulder, and on his 5 large heads, 5 different colored radiances kept rising. More terrible, they were not only focusing on the offense. From little light, radiant world was directly used on Long Houchen. The other heads were visibly preparing for other magic, as those other 4 heads swayed lightly. Crocell, being the demon god of clear vision, even if he was even more afraid than that, he knew that he couldn't keep waiting. If the enemy was let to prepare his attacks, he would face an unavoidable death. Filled with great will to survive, Crocell yelled and rushed forward just like a dark blue bolt of lightning. Flapping the 6 wings on his back, he went directly for Long Houchen. Crocell could of course tell out that Houchen was the core of these enemies. As long as he could be killed, the others would be no threat. The same even went for Hao Yue, as he could sense the existence of a contract between them. 2 blade projections were launched, not at Long Houchen but at the 12th and 10th Holy Guards. The demon god of clear vision's locking ability could hardly be avoided by these 2. Crocell didn't even look them in the eye. An ice-cold dark blue radiance burst out from his eyes, directly launched toward Long Houchen's eyes. A mental attack. Being a demon god of the psychic type, mental magic was Crocell's field of expertise, and as his cultivation reached the 9th step, a mental shock launched by him could sometimes even burst the enemy's head. Long Houchen didn't attempt to dodge. Crocell's most fearful aspect was his ability to land all his attacks by relying on clear vision's godly pool, giving no chance of escape. Hao Yue's heads roared simultaneously, all eyes colored in intense purple intent. At the very moment, Hao Yue and Long Houchen seemed almost to be joined as one. As the purple light in Hao Yue's eyes flashed, Long Houchen's both eyes also turned purplish gold-colored. The 4 holy guards immediately responded to Crocell's 2 blades. Being left without a way to perform dodging maneuvers, the 4 holy guards were greatly suppressed. But even so, they had their own means. 2 icy blue radiances came out from the 11th staff, landing on the 2 black blade projections. The spiritual highland-like projections obviously were stopped by such a simple magic, but it slightly delayed their arrival. Right at that time, 2 thick earth walls appeared in front of the 12th and 10th. More formidably, its appearance was followed by a great change. In the blink of an eye, it changed from earth walls to earth spheres, at least 3 times thicker than the walls used to be. In the meantime, the 10th and 12th Holy Guards drew back very rapidly. The 10th Holy Guard had basically no worries at all. Speed was his greatest field of expertise, so although the enemy's attack was unavoidable, at least he could extend the time before the collision by increasing their distance. On the other side, the 12th Holy Guard struck his blade on the ground to propel himself backwards at great speed. The 2 earth balls were destroyed at the same time, but this time, the great mastery of the 9th Holy Guard became fully visible. Turning into spheres one after another, they blocked the way of attacks of the demon god of clear vision Crocell. When that spiritual highlandized energy reached the 2 holy guards at last, it was finally stopped by 2 large and thick ice walls. Relying on their great magic control, the 9th and 11th guards did their utmost to help the other 2 stop this strike. But even so, when the 10th and 12th stopped the residual energy of the attacks, it still shook the whole Tower of Eternity unto the edges. From this could be seen how powerful the demon god of clear vision Crocell was. A powerhouse of the 9th step was truly a terrible thing for opponents of a lower level. However, Crocell actually suffered a loss. The mental shock attack he launched from his eye didn't have the slightest effect upon landing on Long Houchen's purplish golden eyes. It was as if a shield had been erected outside Long Houchen's eyes, forcibly stopping its way. In the meantime, the aria of the goddess of light in his right hand slowly struck. This attack from Long Houchen was very slow. The accumulated sword intent released at the blade's tip vanished gradually, as an orange brilliance was taken in and sent out from the tip, faintly releasing multicolored golden light. Indeed, under the effects from Long Houchen's spiritual highland and his sword intent, the aria of the goddess of light reached its state approaching the divine tool stage. This was obviously not only due to his increased cultivation, but more importantly thanks to the benefits brought by the fallen meteor nurturing the two heavy swords. Yating, having fused with the Saint Spiritual Stove, had the best nurturing force. She integrated the fallen meteor into the two swords through the Saint Spiritual Stove, increasing their quality all along, though that upgrade was still unfinished. As the heavy swords gained in quality, the fallen meteor was increasingly more used up, so the nurturing couldn't be kept up for much longer. However, this was something that Yating didn't yet have the time to inform Houchen about, but even so, these two swords easily reached the epic tier level, especially Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, which used to only reach its premises before that. As he used his two blades as support while rushing forward, letting out crisp and clear sounds, Crocell absolutely didn't dare receive this strike from Long Houchen with his body. Right at this time, the image of a six-winged angel appeared behind Long Houchen, closely adhering to his back. Immediately, it sharply increased the brilliance released by his two swords, while Long Houchen's mental force became unable to restrict the terrifying sword intent accumulated inside the swords. This was a light spell of the 8th step, serving as support coming from Yating, Blazing Angel's Kiss. This ability has considerable boosting effects, definitely ranked among the best light elemental spells of the 8th step. It enables Long Houchen's gathering speed of light essence to increase while turning all his spiritual energy into spiritual highlandized state for a duration of 30 seconds. In other words, the ability Blazing Angel's Kiss directly turned Long Houchen into a powerhouse of the 9th step for 30 seconds. Its boost was comparable to Star King's Star Domain, with the only difference being that Star Domain could last for a long time. Bang! In a single sword versus dual swords, Long Houchen stumbled 3 steps back, and Demon God of Clear Vision's charging stance was stopped forcibly. Long Houchen's sword strike was terminated, but overwhelming sword intent kept gushing out from his body frantically, to the extent that Crocell was not even able to chain a next attack due to the trembling cold reaction of his whole body. Still, the blades in Crocell's hands had considerably terrible spiritual highlandized energy accumulated. Pushed back, Long Houchen was also unable to follow up. But no matter what one could say, he managed to stop Crocell's charge head-on. As the battle was just getting started right now, 4 of Hayue's head spurted out for magic spells, attacking Crocell. Little Flame had sprayed a fire dragon aimed straight at Crocell's body, and Little Green released wind blades forming a hurricane enveloped around the fire to form a fusion of wind and fire. Little Blue and Little Purple also completed a pair of combinatorial spells. And bluish-purple spear elevated itself in midair without a sound. As Crocell's surroundings were covered by the wind and fire, this bluish-purple ray shot without a sound, aiming for the top of Crocell's head. Getting Hayue's back up, Long Houchen crossed his swords in front of him. His whole body's force was poured inside the heavy swords, as their spiritual energy reached the peak. Immediately, the heavy swords shook lightly, letting out more and more brilliant glows. Their rich and powerful radiance increased as the sword tip retracted gradually. Long Houchen was simply forcefully stifling the leaking sword intent from the boost of Blazing Angel's Kiss back inside the swords. The aria of the Goddess of Light looked like an orange gelatin dessert, brilliant and full of allure. And Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light, was like a dark green jadeite, full of vitality and lustrous like a nascent bud. A dense golden fog kept rising anew, and intense golden flames instantly ascended onto the golden fog, as Long Houchen was exerting his whole strength. Due to facing Hayue's attack, Crocell's strength seemed as if suppressed. All his abilities lost about a fifth of their efficiency, and he looked extremely prudent. Pointing both his blades in opposite directions, one to the sky and the other one to the ground, dark blue radiance reappeared in his eyes, spreading out from within. Then he started spinning in the same place, turning into a black pillar of light colliding against those two spells. The gap of cultivation manifested without a doubt. The fire and wind whirlpool was first destroyed, as the extremely sharp fire dragon was totally unable to make its way inside the black pillar. Then the ice spear launched at him was dodged in a flash, leaving no trace at all. The black light vanished and Crocell staggered backwards. On his left shoulder had appeared a faint dark purple trace, and his left arm was slightly bent down. Hayue's attack unexpectedly dealt some damage to him. This felt really incredible, that at the peak of the 7th step, he could actually wound the Demon God of Clear Vision of the 9th step. The other 3 spells were actually covers for Little Purple's attack. Little Blue wrapped ice around it, transforming it into water in a split second. Although merely a drop had made it past Crocell's defense, its terrifying paralyzing poison was enough to completely benumb the left arm of a powerhouse of the 9th step. Demon gods have very high resistance against poison, but Hayue's poison was visibly out of the ordinary. Due to the paralyzing poison, Crocell's arm would need some time to return to normal, in other words, to fully dispel the poison. But Long Houchen remained unmoving, still using storing power. The ones attacking next were the 4 holy guards. Crocell had a sudden heavy feeling, as a sparkling and translucent brilliance shone above his head in the shape of a diamond-like spear. In the meantime, an icy blue ring instantly enveloped his body, blowing up immediately. It produced an extreme chilliness as a red and a green figure took advantage of that opportunity to rush to him suddenly, launching offenses almost frantically. But right because of the effect from Haoyue's poison, Crocell managed to completely calm down. Haoyue's attack certainly inflicted some damage to him, but also made him realize that the creature he feared to such extent was actually far from his own strength. And under these circumstances, he displayed fully his strength as the demon god of clear vision. In a disadvantaged situation, the calmed-down Crocell was unconditionally fearful. Stomping heavily onto the ground with his left feet, he released a black ray from inside his body, forcibly destroying the 11th ice ring and slowing down the diamond spear launched at him. Then the blade in his right hand struck with an efficiency reaching the maximum. A blade projection was launched, covering 270 degrees, aimed at Long Haochen, as its peak coincided to meet with the diamond spear. And as if the 6 wings on his back came alive, they blocked the 10th and 12th Holy Guard's offenses from behind. The brilliant golden light that met with the black arc turned into thin droplets. That's the fate Long Haochen's light thorn, which served as response, suffered. That's when Yating made her second move. This time, after intervening, her face became quite pale. The strain for a light mage at the premises of the 8th step to launch a spell able to block the attack of a powerhouse of the 9th step was just that great. Tears of the Goddess of Light was a single targeted spell of the 8th step that Yating could use because of relying on Long Haochen's aura as the Scion of Light. Furthermore, as an ability at the supreme peak of the 8th step, this technique was already close to 1 step above her capabilities. Crocell's attack was not only stopped, but the blade in his arm was marked with a golden trail which was dissolving his darkness elemental spiritual energy at a frantic speed. Don't forget that inside the Tower of Eternity, Long Haochen has another advantage, which is his supply of spiritual energy. This place couldn't supplement any elemental essence of other attributes than light and darkness. At the start of the battle, Crocell wasn't too aware of that, but as the battle followed its course, he felt that something was amiss. In other words, that the spiritual energy he consumed wouldn't be replenished. But don't think that in a situation where spiritual energy cannot be supplemented, a prolonged battle would be to Long Haochen's advantage. Crocell's attacks were unavoidable, and the 4 Holy Guards were not of much use in front of him. With the capability of the demon god of clear vision, there's no way he would be unaware that his spiritual energy was not refilled. In case he reaches his limits, it will undoubtedly drive him to desperate actions, putting his life on the table without fear of backlashes. So Long Haochen had to increase his power level to a sufficient level before he'd be driven to such actions. The diamond spear was instantly smashed to pieces, but Crocell's actions paused slightly. The spells from the 4 Holy Guards and Yating were just for the sake of stalling for time for Long Haochen. Such minor creatures dare stand in front of me with such impudence. Having been blocked consecutive times, Crocell was truly infuriated. Narrowing his eyes, he abruptly shot out a dark blue ripple from his head, aimed at attacking the 4 Holy Guards. The instant this dark blue glinting ripple appeared, the 4 Holy Guards immediately had frantic looks, turning suddenly into 4 bolts of light which disappeared, assimilated by the Tower of Eternity. But even so, the bolts they transformed into dimmed a bit in color upon encountering that dark blue ripple. As Crocell was in battle with Long Haochen at the time the 4 Holy Guards appeared, he didn't pay too much attention to them. But very rapidly, he found out that they were actually undead creatures supporting Powerhouse's souls. As a demon god of psychic attribute, he is the nemesis of undead creatures. The force of all undead creatures originate from the soul fire. But his psychic magic is the most expert at extinguishing such soul fires. The last psychic attack was a calamitous threat in the eyes of these 4. Their soul fires were far from able to resist in front of Crocell, so they immediately escaped such an extreme situation. Otherwise, if their soul fires were lost, they had no chance of being resurrected. A jadeite glow extended everywhere the eye could see, like a mix of rain and fog. A figure abruptly came bursting out from within, releasing purpling golden glosses. And the mountain-like Haoyue disappeared all of a sudden. Armor transformation and fusion, Long Haochen's greatest fighting mode. With only storing power, Long Haochen was still not at the 9th step. Only by relying on Haoyue's armor transformation could he launch sword blows with sufficient power to reach the standards of the demon god of clear vision. At that very moment, the enemy's right hand still hadn't dispersed the paralyzing effects on his left arm, and confronted Long Haochen's attacks with only one hand. That mix of rain and fog was the ability Demon Wiping Flash, which was invented by Long Haochen. Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light carried a great breath of life, enveloping each of Crocell's possible escape routes. Can't you predict my next actions? Right, let's meet force with force. The long blade in Crocell's left hand was lifted, launching 9 blade projections through the sky, which gathered together with the long sword and collided with an ear-piercing sound. The 2 of them clashed only once, but Crocell's body was hit with 3 of Long Haochen's blows, which left 3 small bloody holes. On his left shoulder, dark blue blood was flowing, falling to the ground, letting out some ringing sounds. Though, this didn't come without a price for Long Haochen. Crocell's powerful 9 blades in one landed once onto his armor. However, the now pinkish golden, transformed, golden foundation armor came back to normal after getting only slightly sunken for a bit without triggering the effects of the soul-binding chains. Crocell narrowed his eyes, setting his drooping left arm into motion. He purposely let Long Houchen's attacks land for the sake of hitting him and because of the poison in himself. As blood flowed, he had recovered some feeling in his left arm. Houchen's attacks didn't stop at that. As the two of them separated, his left feet tapped towards the ground, as he turned into a purplish golden flash of lightning, once again rushing at Crocell. On his right hand, the aria of the Goddess of Light burst forth with a dazzling splendor beyond compare, and a layer of translucent orange-colored spiritual highlandized energy covered the sword. In the sky, a flashing line was traced toward Crocell. Lightning flash plus Azura strike. In his left hand, blue rain seemed to have faded away, as its dark green luster vanished gradually. But it vaguely seemed even more threatening. In Crocell's eyes appeared a trace of panic, due to having determined through clear vision technique the move Long Houchen was planning because it would be hard to resist. After fusing with Haoyue, Long Houchen's strength was already sufficient to clash head-on against him. Long Houchen couldn't let time drag on, but Crocell was also unable to recover his spiritual energy here. So it would be hard to guess who'd win. Raising the long sword in his right hand, Crocell suddenly turned illusory. 8 illusory images came out and dispersed from him, each having exactly the same physical appearance, with a violent clashing sound. Crocell's body was immediately pushed away by the spiritual highlandized energy-infused aria of the Goddess of Light. It seemed to want to fuse with these sorts of doppelgangers, but right at that time, a dark green gloss flashed by. Crocell only had the time to hit that dark green gloss with a knock of the longsword in his right hand, but only crooked its angle a little. Swinging his body with all his force, he could only twist his body with all his strength, doing his utmost to avoid taking damage. Azura Strike was launched through Blue Rain, Hibiscus of Light. This video will end here. Thank you for watching.